Okay. I'll repeat once again. Hello, my name is Alexandra Sokolova. I'm a Vice Director of International Relations Office, and today I'm going to moderate the webinar dedicated to the utilization of accessible resources wisely, journal assessment for publishing and information management using Mendeley tool. And this webinar is organized as a part of the ATHENA European Alliance series of trainings provided to partner university staff members. And I'm happy to introduce you the first presenter, Raminta Pranckutė. She is the head of the Scientific Information Department, and she's going to introduce you to the main sources and tools for journal search and journal evaluation, focusing on the main bibliographic databases. Also, I would like to mention that the time for questions and answers will be provided after both presentations. So I wish ourselves a great webinar, and yeah, Raminta, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Alexandra, for the introduction. As was mentioned, my name is Raminta Pranckutė, and today I am going to speak about journal selection for publishing. So I would like to share my slides. So can anyone confirm that they see?
Yes, we see it.
Okay. Screen? Thank you very much. So journal selection usually begins with an initial search followed by an assessment of obtained journals, aiming to further narrow the list of potentially suitable journals. So I firstly will speak about the search. Enormous and still growing amount of available journals is overwhelming and at the same time confusing, as it becomes more and more difficult to be sure which journals can be trusted. That heightens the importance of the proper initial search, and therefore it is essential to use only trusted sources. These include publisher websites, bibliographic databases, and other journal indexes and directories. There is also a growing amount of journal selectors, tools that are mainly developed by publishers for selecting the most appropriate journal according to the manuscript intended to be published. However, these selectors require having at least the title, abstract, and in some cases, keywords already defined. In any case, the choice of the source for the initial search highly depend on the source coverage. High amounts of covered journals allows to perform a more precise and more inclusive search, which can be achieved in multidisciplinary databases and in major publishers' websites. However, if the research topic is highly specific, discipline-oriented publishers and databases should also be considered, as they not only allow us to skip the step of filtering journals by disciplines and research fields, but also may include more journals not indexed in multidisciplinary databases. However, as was mentioned, today I will focus only on bibliographic databases, particularly Web of Science, WOS for short, and Scopus, which are both commercial, multidisciplinary, and currently remain recognized as the most trusted databases. Another common feature is that both these databases are primarily focused on the indexed sources, and thus, apart from bibliographic information of indexed scientific publications, they also provide detailed journal information, including impact indicators. Therefore, they can be very useful both for journal search and assessment, especially when indexing and impact indicators are relevant criteria for journal selection. Although by their purpose and scope and functions, these databases are quite similar, one of the most significant differences still between them lies in their structure. As you can see, VOS database is actually a platform hosting and providing access to a wide range of smaller databases and indexes. The most important ones are grouped into the core collection part. Meanwhile, Scopus is not divided into separate parts and provides detailed information profiles for all indexed periodical sources. As I have already mentioned, the accuracy and inclusiveness of journal search firstly depends on the database's indexed source coverage. So therefore, I have collected the main numbers describing VOS and Scopus index sources. Since detailed journal information in VOS is provided only for the core collection part, only this part is described in the table. And judging from the numbers presented, overall source coverage in both databases is relatively similar. However, Scopus coverage is higher and it indexes sources from a wide variety of publishers. It should be also noted that a big part of journals, especially ones with high impact indicator values, are indexed in both databases, and only a minor part of journals indexed in VOS are not included in Scopus. Coverage by disciplines is equally important for journal selection. So both databases cover all major disciplines. However, VOS more comprehensively covers life, biomedical, physical, and technology sciences. Meanwhile, Scopus covers all major disciplines in more equal proportions. And when compared to VOS, Scopus provides better coverage of social sciences. When assessing the journals obtained by the initial search, three aspects need to be evaluated in order to make the most informed choice of a journal. First, suitability, quality, and credibility. And I will discuss each of them further. Journal suitability assessment includes the evaluation of both thematic relations and aspects related to publishing processes. When assessing thematic relation, it is necessary to carefully read the aims of scope or section on the journal's homepage and to determine their compatibility with the manuscript intended to be published. It is also advisable to review the articles published in the previous and current issues of the journal, since in some cases, individual issues can be focused on a more specific and very narrow topics. Moreover, that will also help you to better grasp on the journal's thematic scope. Another important aspect is to consider the auditory of potential readers intended to reach, and would a particular journal would enable to achieve that. So the targeted auditory highly depends on the topic and context of the research. For instance, if the study is dedicated to address a very specific issue relevant only to a specific research field, the scope of the journal should also be very focused and clearly defined. Meanwhile, if the research is addressing the issue relevant only in the national context, it would be more reasonable to choose national journals and to consider one's publishing also in the native language. When evaluating aspects related to publishing processes, the first thing to consider is the publishing models. There are two main publishing models, and the main difference between them arises from the point of how the publishing costs are being covered and how does that affect the accessibility of the published content. So when open access model is used, published content becomes freely accessible immediately after publishing, but it usually involves covering article processing charges. The content is usually published under the Creative Commons licenses, ensuring that the author rights are retained by the author. Meanwhile, a traditional or so-called subscription-based model works in an opposite way. Published content stays behind the paywall. The access to it has to be purchased by subscribing or by paying the fee for an individual publication. But the publishing itself is free of charge and unfortunately usually is delayed. However, in most cases, author rights of the publication are transferred to the publisher upon signing a copyright transfer agreement. Nowadays, many traditional publishers also offer the possibility to publish in their journals via open access. Such journals are regarded as hybrid. Author can choose the model, traditional or open access, to be applied when publishing in such journals. It is often required that the results of the research funded by the public funds would be published openly. Nevertheless, even if there are no particular mandates applicable, if the topic is very highly relevant and impactful for the whole society, journals offering open access model should be prioritized in order to provide unlimited public access. Regardless of the chosen publishing model, authors can make their works available for other means, such as so-called green open access route, when accepted manuscript versions are deposited in the institutional or other open access repositories, of course, if publisher policy permits that. So returning back to the evaluation of aspects related to the journal's publishing processes, editorial provisions applicable to the manuscripts, such as accepted publication types, manuscript extent limitations, language quality, structure, layout, citation styles, and so on, should also be accounted for, as well as other criteria which might be important for the author, like publishing course and speed, related fees, and so on. So basically, this part of journal assessment is actually checking if the manuscript is compatible with the journal's instructions or guidelines for authors. Yet, evaluation of journals' quality is probably the most important part when assessing journals for publishing, since the excellence of research and researchers is mainly defined by the quality of journals in which the research is being published. Although how and by which means the quality of a journal can be accurately defined is still largely debatable, nowadays the majority of research evaluation practices are still primarily based on the journal impact indicator values. And that inevitably determine the criteria defining author's choice of the journal for publishing. So generally, 3 questions should be answered in this regard. Is the journal peer-reviewed? Is it indexed in the main databases and indexes? And does the journal has an impact indicator value? Therefore, bibliometric indicators provided in the bibliographic databases nowadays are probably the most important measures for all academic society. The most extensively used are so-called journal citation or impact indicators. Both VOS and Scopus provide several different indicators for evaluating journals' quality. Due to the limited time, I will not go into details of every indicator and its calculations, but I only briefly highlight some major aspects. So it should be always kept in mind that indicators provided in different databases are not identical, although there are certain analogies, between those indicators regarding their calculation principles, which in turn define how these indicators can be applied. Accordingly, I grouped these indicators into impact, normalized, and prestige indicators. The main aspects which should be accounted for when using or interpreting the values of these indicators are what is being measured, that is, what can be said about the journal judging from the value of a particular indicator. Secondly, are the indicators normalized by disciplines, which defines if the indicator can be used to directly compare journals representing different disciplines. And lastly, what indicator value defines an average journal? Is there is such a value? Knowing that enables you to benchmark journals with a common threshold and thus evaluate their performance in the global context. So when the journals obtained by the initial search have been checked for the suitability regarding thematic relevance, publishing practices, quality requirements, it is also necessary to carefully evaluate the credibility of every single journal remaining in the list. Since with a growing amount of open access journals, unethical and commonly referred as predatory attempts to profit from open access model have also become more and more frequent. Predatory publishers or journals exploit open access model to profit from authors by enticing them with a fast publishing process in seemingly high quality journals. But in fact, they do not make any real contribution to scientific communication. Often the article ends up not being published at all, and the manuscript even becomes unsuitable to republish it in reliable journals. And in this case, the authors not only lose the opportunity to publish valuable results, but also suffer financial losses and, more importantly, damages their reputation. Predatory journals often create the websites by hijacking the information of legitimate and usually well-known journals, including journal title, indexing, impact indicators, editorial boards, and other information. And in some cases, they manage to clone the entire journal webpage, including even journal archives. So therefore, the evaluation of journals' credibility should not be omitted even if the initial search was performed in the trusted sources, as nowadays predator publishers has reached such a high level and sophisticated level of deception that in some cases they are not recognized even by the most prestigious databases. So here I have listed some common red flags, and any of these features signals you that the journal requires deeper inspection in order to be sure of its credibility. This list is far from being exhaustive, but it is simply intended to pay your attention for details which might be seemingly irrelevant, and also are overlooked. There are several tools and resources available for the more reliable checking. And the most popular one is the Think, Check, Submit tool, which provides a checklist to evaluate journals' credibility. It is also useful to check if the journal is actually included in the well-known journal databases. For instance, the same Web of Science and Scopus, and is it registered in the ISSN portal? However, if, as I mentioned before, predators have evolved, and thus several different tools should be used together in order to be completely sure. So to summarize, there are several main questions which should be answered when selecting journal for publishing. what is the topic of the research and for which community it is most relevant, which publishing model is preferred or required, are there any deadlines for publishing the research, is it important what the journals that the journal would be indexed in the main databases and would have impact indicator values, and can the journal be trusted? Answering these questions even before the initial search will help you to select the most appropriate source for the search. And it is also advisable to consider these aspects before or during preparation of the manuscript itself, in order to avoid the burden of any additional adjustments later on. I would also like to emphasize that all journal assessment steps should be carried out considering national, international, institutional, and funding requirements applicable to your particular case, since the policies can predetermine some of the journal selection aspects, especially regarding publishing models and quality. And these requirements often are based on international policies. So here I have listed several sources for checking journal compatibility with international open access and funding requirements. And I here listed another seemingly simpler, but at the same time less inclusive approach, which can be used to select a journal for publishing. This would be to revise the journals in which the papers you have used and cited in your own work were published. So in other words, just to select the journal which appears most frequently in your manuscript reference list. However, you would still have to evaluate the journal's alignment with any applicable mandates, as well as with your own personal needs and preferences. You may also just ask your colleagues for an advice or to share their personal experiences. And so with that, I am finishing the theoretical part of my presentation and would like to make a short live demonstration on how bibliographic database can be employed for searching and evaluating journals. So let me just change my screen view. Yes. Just a second. And also I would like to note that I chose Scopus database for this demonstration. Firstly, because it is one simpler structure, but mostly because all source data and citation impact indicators of all Scopus index sources are freely accessible even without subscription. So, can anyone confirm that they see my internet browser?
Yes, we see it.
Okay, thank you very much. So, as you can see, I have opened Scopus databases homepage, and there are several ways which can be useful in order to search and evaluate journals in Scopus database. The most straightforward one is to use Scopus sources. So yeah, I have already opened Scopus sources, and I will go back to the home page just to show you where the link is placed. And the link to Scopus sources is placed at the top on the top right side panel here. So here in this page, you can simply browse through all sources, all periodical sources indexed in Scopus database. As you can see, there are a lot of them. And since we are talking about journals today, I advise you first of all to limit sources to journals. Don't forget to press apply. And also you can see that you can select only open access journals to be revised, or to select them according to the quartiles to which they are sorted. I just like to note that the quartiles in Scopus database are determined by the values of site score indicators. So here are the values of journal site score indicators, and actually default sorting of journals in Scopus is based on the site score values. But you can change the sorting by pressing on the arrow at any time as you like. And as you can see, besides site score, percentiles, citations, documents, percentage of cited documents, you can see additional indicators and information about the journals. Regarding selection of journals for publishing, I believe that percentage of cited documents is quite important, because you can see what is the probability of being cited when you publish in that journal, being cited if you publish with that journal. So also most of the data are linked, especially the names, the titles of the journals, and by pressing on each of them, you will, I don't know why isn't it working. Oh, it works. You will be redirected to the source details page. And here the main information of the journal is presented, as well as the link to the journal's homepage, the main indicators, the most recent indicator values, and also there are links where you can view all the documents published in that journal. They can be viewed in search, document search type, and be further analyzed by access types, years, and so on. And you can also find the more detailed information about site score at the bottom of the source details. And here, the first, you can see the site score of the most recent years and how it was calculated. You can also revise the documents used for the calculations. And also you can select any other years of site score available for the journal. And next to it, you can see the predicted site score value for the upcoming years, which usually is calculated around the end of June, I believe. And below you can see the subject categories represented by the journal and which position the journal is occupying in that category. As you can see, this journal is first, and what percentile it occupies according to this rank. So this is the main information, and it is very useful when deciding is the journal valuable. You can also revise more detail about score trends, and also you can revise the coverage. So that means how many publications are being published in the journal yearly. Also, regarding the credibility of journals, if you want to check more information about the journal, for instance, instructions for authors or editorial provisions I have mentioned, you should go to the journal homepage from the Scopus link, because you can be sure that these links are credible and will direct you to the real journal homepage. So I will go back to the Scopus homepage and briefly show you another way which can be used when selecting the journals. So, for instance, you can perform a simple keyword search. For instance, by default in the article title, abstract, and keywords, you can, I don't know, for instance, computer engineering. As you can see, there are a lot of results in Scopus. And you can just use the filtering panel to further limit your results. So you can limit to journals firstly. You can also limit document types to include only articles. You can limit to the particular subject areas. Don't forget to limit. And then you can further analyze by selecting a preferred publishing model, or limit only to the most recent years. And afterwards, you can analyze the results by source titles and select the ones which appear more frequently in your results, and then analyze them further. Another thing I forgot to mention when I was in the sources is, I apologize, I went too far. So that you can not only browse sources, but you can also limit them to the subject areas, titles, publishers, ISSN numbers. It is also helpful to make your initial search more focused and directed. For instance, if you select subject area, you can begin to type and then select from the options below, or you can just select from the full list. Anything it is, you can select several subject areas. So also, when a particular journal page is opened, there is a third possibility to evaluate journals, is to compare sources. So the journal from the one's homepage you have entered the comparison site is already in the comparison, already displayed. And you can add more journals by their ISSN, publisher, source titles, or from any other subject area, or by simply searching by typing the fragment of the title or keywords, and select any from the search results. For instance, so we can select several additional journals to add. It's taking quite long. Apparently something is not quite well in Scopus. It shouldn't take so long. Okay, I won't try to add another journal. I just want to briefly show what is available. You can add up to 10 sources to compare, and you can remove them at any time by pressing X. You can also select the view of the results, comparison results. This is a graph with visualization, but you can also select to represent information in tables. And you can also select all types of information by which you want to compare the journals. You can compare by different indicators, by citations. You can also evaluate how many documents are published yearly and how many documents in this case are not cited in the journal, in the journals being evaluated, and so on. And also you can evaluate the percentage of review articles published in the journals. It might be relevant when you are searching a journal for publishing review article, because not all journals accept those. So I believe this is a short introduction to what can be done in Scopus database regarding journal search and evaluation. And I don't know, probably I missed something, but if you have any further questions, I will be waiting for you. Welcome them after my colleague will end her presentation. So I will just give her the floor. So Julia, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Raminta. Thank you, Raminta, for your presentation. Yeah, and the next presentation will begin by Julia Gilienė. She's the Chief Librarian of Training and Public Relations Department of VILNIUS TECH Library, and she's going to present you the bibliographic information management tool, Mendeley. So, Julia, the floor is yours. Somehow I don't see Julia in the list.
Me too, maybe her internet connection broke.
I will give her a call. Yeah, I just contacted Julia by the phone, and unfortunately at the place she is currently, there's no internet. The internet was broken. So it's a kind of a force majeure situation, but we agreed with Julia that she will record her presentation, and we will share both slides of Raminta and Julia and recordings of this part of the presentation, Julia's presentations later on. As soon as she has recording, I will have a list of all of your presentations. So now you could ask Raminta the questions that you have for her. You could both write in chat or raise your hand, so I'll give the floor to anyone who is having the inquiries. Any questions?
I would like to thank Asta for the very, very pleasant comments. Thank you.
Yeah, in case you don't have any questions for this presentation, we will close it. And as I said, you will receive by email the PowerPoint presentation and also a recording of the second part of the training. And thank you very much for participating in this webinar. And thank you again, Raminta, for the very detailed and elaborate presentation today. Thank you.
Thank you very much for hosting, and everyone who joined us. Goodbye.